The following action research project was conducted during a 6-week block in a Stage 2 Year 4 class at Beauty Point Public School. This practicum was undertaken over 10 days in Term 3 and then 20 days at the start of Term 4. The project aimed to incorporate all levels of the MEE framework, focusing specifically on motivation and engagement by implementing a wide range of differentiation skills. Throughout the project, I aim to analyse and utilise a wide range of activities, groupings, and tasks to benefit the extreme levels of learning abilities in my class. My focus group question was, how can I improve student engagement and participation by enhancing my differentiation skills? This is my submission page, which is a link to my Weebly website, which contains my video, as well as my student email. Beauty Point Public School is a government-funded school located in the higher socio-economic area of the North Shore suburb, Mossman. It is a mid-sized school with an enrolment of 308 students for the 2019 school year. Although the school has no Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders, it is still quite culturally diverse, with 32% of students having a language background other than English. For this practicum, I was placed in one of 2 Year 4 classes, which consisted of 31 students. Although this class wasn't a composite class, there was an immense range of abilities, ranging from early stage 1 to stage 4. Along with this, there was also several students with additional needs, from learning to behavioural, which certainly made this class challenging. My mentor teacher was a young, vibrant teacher who has been teaching for 6 years, 2 of those with Year 4. She had an amazing control over her class and an extraordinary way to maintain engagement and excitement, but still have all of her students remain on task. A significant part of this was how she demonstrated her differentiation skills effectively, which I quickly realised was a vital part of how she taught her class so successfully. This seemed like a great opportunity to use this as my focus for my research plan. I was able to witness this firsthand in my observation week, which helped tremendously for me to be able to teach the class to the best of each student's ability. This is a visual representation of just how diverse the learning levels were in my class. Using data collected from my mentor teacher, I was able to divide the students into the stage they were at for the subjects of math, English, and science. This also made it a lot easier when grouping students, differentiating tasks, and as a general guide to see their progress over the time of my practicum. Throughout my experience so far in my 3 different schools, I found a common trend of classrooms being significantly diverse and complex. This initial thought was heightened even more after my first 2 weeks teaching on this practicum. I saw differentiation as a vital tool in order to maintain student engagement and participation, and when implemented effectively, I saw it having a greater impact on the learning of my students. This meant catering to each and every student's individual learning needs, which, although it took a lot of time and practice to get it right, was the best way to get the most out of my students. This involved heavy discussions from the start of my practicum with my mentor teacher about each and every student's needs and abilities. I gathered the relevant information needed to understand the best way to teach every student and made several notes and documents to record each student's ability and progression over the period I was there. I observed how each student learnt best and devised strategies and plans to make each lesson beneficial for each and every student. I took particular interest in highlighting certain students who weren't as engaged as others in lessons and discussed ways of improving this with my mentor teacher. This included extended scaffolding and instructions for emergent students, grouping students based on ability, both mixed and similar, using whole group activities to maintain focus, and constructing challenging yet achievable goals for extension students. These strategies were designed to align with the MEE framework to build student engagement through active participation and reflective involvement in deep understanding through the use of differentiation. This also aimed to look at motivation on an individual level to help students gain a sense of self-efficacy, active participation, and increasing the quality and quantity of their work. Building these skills will be highly beneficial to my future teaching practice and will enable me to become a more inclusive, flexible, competent, and efficient teacher, capable of adapting to any teaching environment. This is relative to my teaching practice of providing a positive, engaging classroom that is inclusive of all learners and where all students will feel equally valued and supported to be able to thrive in their learning experience. I obtained full consent from Beauty Point's principal and my mentor teacher in regard to collecting and using any student data for this research report. See Appendix 1. Observation notes. During the first week, I was heavily engaged in recording students' engagement and achievement levels. This included several discussions with my mentor teacher regarding each student in the class. From the help of my mentor teacher, I documented each of my students' abilities and where they were at in the context of the syllabus. This enabled me to understand what the students needed to be taught and where students were struggling or excelling. Student talk. I made a very conscious decision from the start to get to know students on a personal level through conversation and building rapport, which I was able to do during the first week when I wasn't teaching the lessons. This assisted me in finding out how each student learnt best and what type of activities and tasks could keep them engaged and enable them to complete work sufficiently. Work samples. Throughout the whole practicum experience, I consistently took pictures of students' work to assist in my knowledge of each student and to see how they were progressing after each task. It also served as a way to measure engagement and participation. Written feedback. After implementing each lesson, I analysed the feedback given by my mentor teacher and constructed ways to improve my lessons or implement differentiation in a more successful way. This personal and collaborative reflection was an incredibly helpful way to develop not only my differentiation skills, but my overall teaching. Further discussion of my observations and work samples will be examined in the following slides. The first type of data I collected and analysed was the initial post-lesson professional reflection. This was done after each lesson following a discussion with my mentor teacher on her general lesson feedback. I aimed to be as honest with myself as I could to try and improve on each lesson and become more consistent in the success of my lessons. These observational notes allowed me to break apart the lesson and find out what went well and what I could improve on. I was able to judge how successful my differentiation skills were in engaging the class and motivating every learner. This first observation explains my satisfaction after successfully implementing grouping activities for my math lesson. As this class has a very large range of math abilities, I utilize this strategy to keep every student encouraged and on task, and to not overwhelm any lower learners or disinterest the extension students. This resulted in higher student engagement and overall participation, which directly linked to the small e in the MEE framework. Observation 2 was the general lesson feedback, which was written by my mentor teacher as I was teaching the lesson. From previous lessons, we discussed that this class needed hands-on activities and open-ended questions for all levels. I incorporated both of those in my lesson to great success. Having 31 students with varying abilities makes it extremely difficult to have any one-on-one time. So anytime one or two students were asking similar questions, I would do an explanation for the whole class to see. This immensely helped those students who were unsure but didn't have the confidence to ask questions. I also provided assistance in a group at the front for the lower learners. However, I made sure to specify this as an open invitation rather than singling out those students who might feel insecure or embarrassed that they don't understand the content, leading to a negative effect on their engagement. Observation 3 shows my reflection on a music lesson using different grouping strategies to increase engagement. Throughout the lesson, the class was involved in whole class activities, team activities, and group performances. This encapsulated the class from the start, and each student seemed to thoroughly enjoy working in different situations. The mixed groupings afforded the chance for peer-assisted learning to take place and also have each student work at their level, which is highlighted by Lyons, Ford, and Arthur Kelly. This strategy worked well with the whole class, with each group successfully performing a musical piece by the end of the lesson. Observation 4 shows my mentor teacher's feedback on the successful implementation of my differentiation strategies, highlighting the fact each student felt confident in their abilities, resulting in more engagement and participation throughout the class. Yeah, come in. The next type of data I gathered to analyze and reflect on was the students' work samples. My first example was from a differentiated math lesson on volume and capacity. I kept the basic concept of the lesson the same, however, the difficulty level was adjusted for each student. Adding this differentiation to the base of the lesson allowed all students to understand the task and the process needed. These examples demonstrate the effective nature of the task, with each student completing the task, whether they were at an emergent, accomplished, or extension level. Work sample 2 shows another math lesson, this time on length. From my previous pre-assessment data, I was able to successfully pair the students together with a mixed ability. This collaborative task engaged all the students and enabled peer-assisted learning to take place. They worked around the classroom to find and measure items to specific lengths, which became a fun, engaging activity with a clear purpose and skill to be learnt. Work sample 3 shows pictures of my lessons teaching the ukulele to the class. This involved heavy differentiated instruction in order to have each student learn to play the ukulele successfully. This culminated in our class performing a song in front of the school at an assembly. And finally, work sample 4 is an example of my problem-solving math lessons. This is where I would provide problem-solving questions at various levels for the range of abilities I had in my class. Students loved trying to figure out the questions and move their way up the problem-solving levels, as well as having the freedom of choice of which questions they wanted to do. Students eventually started creating their own questions, which showed an increased excitement and enthusiasm. The third form of data I collected and annotated were records of conversations between myself and my students. The following transcript was recorded while students were completing a writing task individually. This certain student suffers from ADHD and struggles to focus if he can't understand the task. This resulted in the student becoming disengaged and unmotivated throughout the lesson. The next transcript shows a conversation with the same student just over 2 weeks later. Upon our initial contact, I realized the reason he wasn't liking the task was because he wasn't writing what he wanted to write about. I made a slight adjustment to the next writing task and differentiated it so students could write on a subject they were passionate about. This significantly improved his eagerness to write, and his excitement and participation increased. This positive change in attitude allowed him to put all his energy into the task in a productive manner. The last type of data for my research project was student self-assessment in the form of quick written responses to the content of the lesson. The evidence collected shows students' sense of achievement and their levels of confidence moving forward. It also showed whether they were engaged and how well they participated during the lesson. Before undertaking this research plan, I knew differentiation was a factor in successfully teaching a class. However, once immersed in such a diverse array of students, it has become incredibly clear how imperative sustaining and perfecting my differentiation skills will be for my future teaching. Through differentiating activities, instructions, and implementing grouping strategies, I was able to build students' engagement and participation to maximize their learning opportunities. This also enabled me to build relationships on trust, so students valued their learning and took pride in their work, showing a sense of achievement when completing tasks. As a result of this successful research plan, I will continue to diligently incorporate and build on my differentiation skills over the years to come. Here is a list of my references used throughout my research plan. Here are the 2 consent forms signed by my mentor teacher and the principal of Beauty Point Public School prior to commencing my research plan. Obtaining individual consent forms was not necessary as each student has already been given signed permission for the collection of their work for student data. Here is Appendix 2 showing my focus group participation. Each member posed a question in relation to each individual's research plan. During tutorials 7, 8 and 9, we discussed our plans in detail and assisted each other with ideas and thoughts to make our experience more successful. We also created a messenger thread to answer and discuss our questions as a group. Each member of our focus group provided advice and suggestions to enhance our research plans. These conversations went back and forth over the weeks of our practicum. This has been my action research plan presentation for researching and developing engaging pedagogies. Thank you for watching.